Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Drums and Drams. My name's Cameron, and today I've got a quick sample review for all of you. In today's video, I'm going to be taking a look at a product coming to us from the Augusta Distillery. This is their 17-year-old Buckner's Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey. This is bottled at cask strength, and it's a single barrel release. So on paper, when you see a 17-year-old age statement, barrel-proof, single barrel product, it is Kentucky Straight Bourbon. That's pretty much everything a whiskey enthusiast would ever want to see on paper, except for the price point on this bottle, which is $400 if you find this at SRP. This is not uncommon for products coming out of the Augusta Distillery. It's all sourced stuff. All of it feels a little bit expensive, even considering the age statements, the single barrel aspect of it, being cask strength. Even with those really impressive attributes of these whiskeys, I feel like a lot of their prices are kind of a reach for some folks. And so that is the one thing to keep in mind as we get into today's review. Now, I'm going to speculate here for just a second. I have to imagine that if they have a product like this, given the proof point, this is barrel number 3 at 117.8 proof, this is probably going to be Barton sourced, which I think their 13-year release most definitely was Barton sourced. If anybody knows otherwise, please correct me in the comments section. But I'm going to go on the assumption that this is, in fact, Barton sourced bourbon. We're going to get into this review, and yes, you do see a bottle of Calumet Farm 16 on the table. I'll do a quick comparison at the end of this video, because I think when you think about what's still on the shelf out there right now, there might be some Sam Houston 14, 15, maybe even 12 still sitting in some places, but by and large, I think you're going to find some of these Calumet Farm, 15 and 16-year products, which are kind of the comparison when you're looking at these sourced Barton highly aged bourbons that are still on the market. And to that point, Calumet Farm actually has a 17 and 18-year-old release that are going to be hitting shelves at some point in the future. I'm not exactly sure when that release is going to be, but I have to imagine that those price points might be a little bit lower. That's just kind of a guess than this Augusta Distillery, 17-year-old Buckner's bourbon. So that's kind of the setup. Let's go ahead and check this out now on the nose. This is all of the whiskey that I have. I just have a little 1-ounce sample, so I only have one chance to do this video. Hope I don't screw it up. Let's check it out on the nose now and see what we get. Okay, so look, this smells really good. It has a lot of hallmark notes of a highly aged Kentucky bourbon. In this case, I get a ton of deep, rich cherry notes. A lot of these sourced Barton products, again, we're going to work on that assumption for this video. A lot of products like this have kind of a medicinal cherry note. I think this Calumet Farm 16 has a little bit of it, but mostly the 15, some of the Sam Houstons. This doesn't go medicinal for me. This is very dark, rich, spiced cherry notes. There's a lot of barrel char coming out of the glass as well. Yeah, and it's got this old school leather note to it, this old oak component as well. It is on the verge of being a super special whiskey on the nose, but it's just not quite there. This is reaching into the territory of vanilla cream, which is a note that you get on really highly aged Kentucky bourbons, in my experience. It's reaching for that note, but it's not quite there. It's reaching for this enveloping sweet oak profile, but it's not quite there, because the oak notes in this whiskey right now are a little spicier still, almost like a Dr. Pepper kind of profile. So barrel char, Dr. Pepper. Again, these are hallmarks of this style of bourbon, assuming that it is perhaps Barton sourced. But there's an extra layer here, which is showing the age of the whiskey, showing the 17 years. I feel like with this product, I wish it was 19 or 20. I know that's a silly want to have. We always want older whiskey. But I think given a few more years in the barrel, this could be some seriously special stuff. But overall, I do think the nose smells great. There's a lot of deep, rich, aged components to this. Yeah, there's even actually a tropical fruit element here. And it's not necessarily bright. I'm more in the territory of grilled pineapple notes. So there is something a little bit smoky to this. I mentioned barrel char, smoky, grilled pineapple, maybe almost mesquite. And I don't say that in the way of a Texas whiskey where you're getting just syrupy, kind of savory profiles. But this has a little element of that kind of mesquite, tone to it, I guess. All right, so with that said, let's get this on the palate now. We'll come back to the nose. Cheers, guys. Oh, God. It's really, really, really good. I mean, this is like Whiskey of the Year material for 2024. The problem is that the price point is $400. I just don't know. Like, if you stack this up against other whiskeys at this price point, and let's go with SRP, like Evan Williams 23, for instance. I think that's around $400. Like, Evan Williams 23 does have that sweet oak thing to it. I know it's Heaven Hill. I know it's a totally different style, a different distillate. But at the price point, it's got a higher age statement by 6 years. I mean, that's significant. A little lower proof, I think 107. But that's kind of a thing that sticks in my mind at this price point for a comparison. And I just don't think this is quite there. But with that said, like, this is probably going to be a top 10 whiskey of the year. It's a single barrel. They're all going to vary. I don't know what that variance is going to be like. I would imagine they're selecting fantastic barrels to be released under this, under this label. And I am going to give you some tasting notes, I promise, but I'm just kind of thinking out loud on this product. Like, where does it sit in the market? Is it something that is so super premium that even at $400 it makes sense to me? First sip says no. First sip says this is like a $250 bottle when I think about other things on the market at that price point. And with that said, then I feel like secondary-wise, if there's any upcharge to this, it just would not make any sense for me. But it tastes delicious. I'm going to do a second sip now, and I'm going to give you some tasting notes this time, I promise. Here we go. Oh my God, it's so good. It really is so good. It gets sweeter as you sip it, as your palate acclimates to this intense Dr. Pepper spice, barrel char, smokiness in the background, and all of those kind of like spiced, rich, dark cherry notes. After you acclimate to that, it does brighten up just a bit. It gets a little bit sweeter. Yeah, this is good whiskey. This is so good, and I'm torn about this because of the price point. I think $400. I just don't know what to say about it. So let's do a quick comparison now. Let's check it out next to this Calumet Farm 16, which I believe is like 150 to 180, depending on where you're at. That's probably going to be the price on this. No real secondary upcharge for this bottle because it's still sitting on shelves around the country. So let's compare it to this. Now, the proof is a little different. This is going to be 106 versus the 117.8 on this single barrel of Buckner 17. So keep that in mind as we go. But let's check it out now. Let's do a quick nosing side by side. Yeah, that Buckner's, man. The spice and that Dr. Pepper thing and the intensity in the barrel char, it's so nice. It could be a little closed off to me. That's like the one complaint on the nose. It could use a little more sweetness and a little less spice, but beggars can't be choosers. Although at $400, I don't know. Calumet on the nose? Right, so Calumet Farm is much lighter, much sweeter, more easygoing on the nose. It's definitely inviting, and I don't get that sharp, aggressive spice that I get from the 17-year. Now, there's only 1 year of difference between these, right? But the proof really plays a big part in this. The Calumet Farm has kind of like this bubblegummy, brighter, almost candied fruit note that sits on the top of it. And I actually find a little tropical fruit in there too. Like I said, grilled pineapple on the 17. I think Calumet Farm 16 has just not a grilled pineapple note. It's just pineapple. It's a little bit of this kind of brighter tropical thing on the top of the whiskey. There's also kind of a lemon pledge furniture polish note. Yeah, that type of sensation that I get off of the Calumet Farm 16. And it's the reason that I was a little turned off by this bottle. Value-wise, it's great. But Calumet Farm 16 to me had some of these brighter notes that I just didn't care for as much as the Sam Houston releases, and even Calumet Farm 15, more medicinal cherry on that, but it was darker, and I like the darker profile of that one a little bit better. So I think in this side-by-side comparison, yeah, you could tell just the intensity of the 17-year with all of that spiciness and almost like grittiness on the nose. So now I'm going to taste the Calumet Farm 16, and we'll go back to the 17 and wrap this video up. Very, very like, I hate to say this word, smooth. It's a very smooth entry onto the palate. Great development, but it's a crushable whiskey, right? Like the Calumet Farm 16 to me is almost like, and don't take this the wrong way, it's like an everyday version of an old whiskey profile that you can come back to and crush day in and day out. It's not absurdly priced around $150, but it's also not cheap enough to be your daily. So to me, it's like my go-to old whiskey profile, if that makes any sense. Now back to the 17-year for one final sip. Yeah, man. I love this 17. I love this whiskey. I love this profile. The little complaint on the nose about it feeling just a smidge tight, I will totally let that go because the palate is so dense and rich with these dark cherry notes and these dark fruit notes. I'm going to go back to what I said earlier, though. I think this is on the verge of being substantial, like impactful, great whiskey, where I would say, yes, even at $400, pull the trigger. I say that about Evan Williams 23. This is almost there. And it could be a product of it being a single barrel release, and some of the other barrels are better. I'm assuming some are also going to be worse. And it's probably splitting hairs at that point. But if this had just 10 to 15% more of an approachability and a sweeter oak profile that it's really starting to develop right now, I would say that this could be a whiskey of the year candidate, right? And as of now, this particular barrel that I'm tasting right now on this day in this video is probably a top 10 for me, which is still phenomenal. But that means that when I look at the price point, I am turned off by it. So I've done my best in this video. And I hope you recognize I'm trying to figure out how to talk about this with the price, right? It's still amazing whiskey, but the price to me is a really tough sell. And I'm trying to do my best to reconcile these things. But overall, look, this aged whiskey coming out of Augusta Distillery, it's all really, really good stuff. I haven't had a bad bottle yet. I've just thought maybe the prices could get a little bit more in line with consumer expectation, let's say. But at the end of the day, they do turn out quality products. And I think the takeaway for me from this video is that I'm going to be curious to see the Calumet Farm 17, the Calumet Farm 18, and how this presumably Barton sourced distillate continues to age. I think at 20 years old, if you could have barrels of this at 20 at cask strength, it could be some of the best whiskey ever. And it's showing that promise here with this Augusta Distillery 17-year release. So thank you guys for checking this out. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let me know if you've had the chance to try this product or the 15 or the 13 or the 10 or the 8 coming out of Augusta. Look, it's great stuff. It's just the price point. That's all I'm going to say, guys. Check out the Patreon for bonus content and barrel picks. Cheers, and I'll see you next time here on Drums and Drams.